Hello. Hello. I'm assuming people can hear me. It's taking a while, though. Hello, it's been a while, I know. I know. Hello. I'm here. I'm here. It's true. I'm alive. So, happy Halloween, everybody. Today we're going to do something special, just some background noise, if you will. Listen to it while you're feeling a little spooky, or if you're doing homework or something. I don't judge, I do this all the time. Not streaming, listening to something in the background. So, what should we start off first with? Let's see. I'm thinking, we should sing a little song first. But what to sing? What to sing? I think I found something. One minute, I'm gonna... Oh, I think I should be alright. Oh, I forgot. I have a spooky background I'm using. Middle of the night, the moon shines bright, strange unknown feelings, dark and ancient, lost in the woods, alone and weary. Fear grows within my heart. Middle of the night. Whoops. Let's restart. I was a bit distracted, I'll be honest. I'm sorry. Middle of the night, The moon shines bright, strange, unknown feelings, dark and ancient, lost in the woods alone, and weary fear grows within my heart. Deep in the forest, neath the branches, monstrous serpent, evil fairy, a magic kitten appears before me, and my heart hesitates. Far from my family, far from my home, confusing feelings come and go. Do I travel with a friend or foe? Can I find the power lying within? What lies beneath the tangled thistles, monster or ghost, unnatural fairy? I cannot trust what appears before me, but my heart becomes brave. Deep in the forest, scattered dew shines, friend of my heart, ferocious kitten, allied together we fight side by side. I'm no longer alone. Struggling together, fighting our way through, confusing feelings come and go. Even though the sky's dark and my power within grows anew. Middle of the night, the moon shines bright, dear friend of my heart, wild kitten, anxiety fleeing farther and farther. I'm no longer alone. Wind whistles under the shimmering stars, and I know I am not alone. Alone. Far from my family, far from my home, confusing feelings I've come to know. But as our paths part from each other, my sadness threatens to consume. In the woods I'll be alone. I'm no longer afraid. Lost within my heart, silver tears still fall. Oh, that was a nice and fun warm-up. One second, doing a little bit of a shameless self-promotion on with some of the people I know. Now, let's tell like a little spooky poem, shall we? So, if you guys don't know, I live in Maryland, and one of the few things we've got going for us is the famous spooky poet Edgar Allan Poe. Let's start with Cask of Amontillado. The 1,000 injuries of Fortunato I had borne as best I could, but when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge. You, who so well know the nature of my soul, will not suppose, however, that I gave utterance to a threat. At length I would be avenged. This was a point definitely settled, but the very definitiveness with which it was resolved precluded the idea of risk. I must not only punish, but punish with impunity, as long as unredressed. When retribution overtakes its redresser, it is equally unredressed when the avenger fails to make himself felt as such to him who has done the wrong. It must be understood that neither word nor deed had I given Fortunato cause to doubt my good will. I continued, as was my wont, to smile in his face, and he did not perceive that my smile now was at the thought of his immolation. He had a weak point, this Fortunato, although in other regards he was a man to be respected and even feared. He prided himself on his connoisseurship in wine. Few Italians have the true virtuoso spirit. For the most part, their enthusiasm is adopted to suit the time and opportunity, to practice imposture upon the British and Austrian millionaires. In painting and gemmery, Fortunato, like his countrymen, was a quack, but in the matter of old wines, he was sincere. In this respect, I did not differ from him materially. I was skillful in the Italian vintages myself, and bought largely whenever I could. It was about dusk, one evening during the supreme madness of Carnival season, that I encountered my friend. He accosted me with excessive warmth, for he had been drinking too much. The man wore motley. He had on a tight-fitting party-striped dress, and his head was surmounted by the conical cap and bells. I was so pleased to see him that I thought I should have never done wringing his hand. I said to him, My dear Fortunato, you are luckily met. How remarkably well you are looking today. But I have received a pipe of what passes for Amontillado, and I have my doubts. How? Said he. Amontillado? A pipe? Impossible! In the middle of the carnival. I have my doubts, I replied, and I was silly enough to pay the full Amontillado price without consulting you on the matter. You were not to be found, and I was fearful of losing a bargain. Amontillado! I have my doubts. Amontillado! And I must satisfy them. Amontillado! As you are engaged, I am on my way to Ucherry. If anyone has a critical tone, it is, he will tell me, Uchercy cannot tell Amontillado from sherry. And yet some fools will have it that his taste is a match for your own. Come, let us go. Whither? To your vaults. My friend, no, I will not impose upon your good nature. I perceive you have an engagement. Uchercy, I have no engagement. Come. My friend, no, it is not the engagement, but the severe cold with which I perceive you are afflicted. The vaults are insufferably damp. They are encrusted with nitre. Let us go, nevertheless. The cold is merely nothing. Amontillado, you have been imposed upon. As for Uchercy, he cannot distinguish sherry from Amontillado. Thus speaking, Fortunato possessed himself of my arm, and putting on a mask of black silk, and drawing a roquelaire. It's not giving me a pronunciation guide, I'm sorry. Closely about my person, I suffered him to hurry me to my palazzo. There were no attendants at home. They had absconded me to make merry in the honor of the time. I had told them I should not return until the morning, and had given them explicit orders to not stir from the house. These orders were sufficient, I knew well, to ensure their immediate disappearance, one and all, as soon as my back was turned. I took from their sconces 2 flambeaux, and gave one to Fortunato, bowed him through several suites of rooms to the archway that led to the vaults. I passed down a long and winding staircase, requesting him to be cautious as he followed. We came at length to the foot of descent, and stood together upon the damp ground of the catacombs of the Montresors. The gait of my friend was unsteady, and the bells upon his cap jingled as he strode. "The pipe," he said. "It is farther on," I said. "But observe the white webwork which gleams from these cavern walls." He turned toward me, looked me into my eyes with 2 flimsy orbs that distilled the fume of intoxication. "Nitra?" he asked at length. "Nitra," I replied. "How long have you had that cough?" My poor friend found it impossible to reply for many minutes. "I'm not going to cough for several minutes on stream." "It is nothing," he replied at last. "Come," I said with decision, "we will go back. Your health is precious. You are rich, respected, admired, beloved. You are happy as once I was. You are a man to be missed. For me it is no matter. We will go back if you will be ill, and I cannot be responsible. Besides, there's a courtesy—" "Enough," he said. "This cough is a mere nothing. It will not kill me. I shall not die of a cough." "True, true," I replied, "and indeed I have no intention of alarming you unnecessarily, but you should use all proper precaution. A draught of this medoc will defend us from the damps." Here I knocked off the neck of a bottle, which I drew from a long row of its fellows that laid upon the mould. "Drink," I said, presenting him the wine. He raised his lips with a leer. He paused and nodded to me familiarly, while his bells jingled. "I drink," he said, "to the buried that repose around us, and I to your long life." He again took my arm, and we proceeded. "These vaults are extensive." "The Montresors," I replied, "were a great and numerous family." "I forget your arms." "A huge human-foot door, and a field azure. The foot crushes a serpent, rampant, whose fangs are embedded in the heel." "And the motto?" "No more mpun lacit." "Good." The wine in his eyes sparkled, and the bells jingled. My own fancy grew warm with the medoc. We passed through the long walls of piled skeletons, with casks and puncheons intermingling, into the inmost recesses of the catacombs. I paused again, and this time I made bold to seize Fortunato, an arm above the elbow. "The nitre," I said. "See, it increases. It hangs like moss upon the vaults. We are below the river's bed. The drops of moisture tickle among the bones. Come, we will go back ere it is too late. You cough." "It is nothing," he said. Let us go on. But first, another draught of the medoc." I broke and reached him a flagon of De Grave. He emptied it at a breath. His eyes flashed with a fierce light. He laughed and threw the bottle upwards with a gesticulation I did not understand. I looked at him surprised. He repeated the movement. It was grotesque. "You did not comprehend?" he said. "Not I," I replied. "Then you are not of the Brotherhood." "How?" "You are not of the Masons." Yes, I said. Yes. "You! Impossible." "A Mason?" "A Mason," I replied. "A sign," he said. A sign! It is this, I answered, producing from beneath the folds of my roquelaire a trowel. You jest, he exclaimed, recoiling a few paces. But let us proceed to the Amontillado. Be it so, I said, replacing the tool beneath the cloak and again offering him my arm. He leaned upon it heavily. We continued our route in search of the Amontillado. We passed through a range of low arches, descended, passed on, and descending again, arrived at a deep crypt in which the foulness of the air caused our flambeau to glow rather than flame. At the most remote end of the crypt there appeared another, less spacious. Its walls had been lined with human remains, piled to the vault overhead, in the fashion of the great catacombs of Paris. 3 sides of this interior crypt were still ornamented in this manner. From the 4th side the bones had been thrown down and laid promiscuously upon the earth, forming at one point a mound of some size. Within the wall, thus exposed by displacing the feet of the bones, we perceived a still interior crypt, a recess, in depth about 4 feet, in width 3, in height 6 or 7. It seemed to have been constructed with no special use within itself, but formed merely the interval between the 2 colossal supports of the roof of the catacombs, and was backed by one of their circumscribing walls of solid granite. It is in vain that Fortunato, uplifting his dull torch, endeavored to pry into the depths of the recess. Its termination the feeble light did not enable us to see. Proceed, I said. Herein is the Amontillado. As for Lucrece, he is an ignoramus, interrupted my friend as he stepped unsteadily forward, while I followed immediately at his heels. In an instant, he had reached the extremity of the niche, and finding his progress arrested by the rock, stood stupidly bewildered. A moment more, and I had fettered him into the granite. At its surface were 2 iron staples, distant from each other about 2 feet horizontally. From one of these depended a short chain, from the other a padlock. Throwing the links about his waist, it was but the work of a few seconds to secure it. He was much too astounded to resist. Withdrawing the key, I stepped back from the recesses. Pass your hand, I said, over the wall. You cannot help feeling the nitre. Indeed, it is damp. Once more, let me implore you to return. No, and I must positively lead you. But first I must render you all the little attentions in my power. The Amontillado, ejaculated my friend, not yet recovering from his astonishment. True, the Amontillado. As I said these words, I busied myself among the pile of bones of which I have spoken. Throwing them aside, I soon uncovered a quantity of building stone and mortar. With these materials and the aid of my trowel, I began vigorously to wall up the entrance of the niche. I had scarcely laid the first tier of the masonry when I discovered that the intoxication of Fortunato had in great measure worn off. The earliest indication I had of this was the low moaning cry from the depths of the recesses. It was not the cry of a drunken man. There was then a long and obstinate silence. I laid the 2nd tier, and the 3rd, and the 4th, and then I heard the furious vibrations of the chain. The noise lasted for several minutes, during which, that I might hearken to it with the more satisfaction, I ceased my labors and sat down upon the bones. When the last clanking subsided, I resumed my trowel, and finished without interruption the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th tier. The wall was now nearly upon a level with my breast. I again paused, and holding a flambeau over the mason work, threw a few feeble rays upon the figure within. A succession of loud and shrill screams, bursting suddenly from the throat of the chained form, seemed to thrust me violently back. For a brief moment, I hesitated. I trembled. Unsheathing my rapier, I began to grope with it about the recess, but the thought of an instant reassured me. I placed my hand upon the solid fabric of the catacombs and felt satisfied. I reapproached the wall. I yelled. I replied to the yells of him who clamored. I re-echoed. I aided. I surpassed them in volume and strength. I did this, and the clamorer grew still. It was now midnight. My task was drawing to a close. I had completed the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th layer. I had finished a portion of the last and the 11th. There remained but one single stone to be fitted and plastered in. I struggled with its weight. I placed it partially in its destined position, but now there came from out the niche a low laugh that erected the hairs upon my head. It was succeeded by a sad voice, which I had difficulty in recognizing that of the noble Fortunato. That voice said, a very good joke indeed. An excellent jest. We will have many a witch laughed about it at the palazzo over her wine. The Amontillado, I said. Yes, the Amontillado. But is it not getting late? Will they not be awaiting us at the palazzo? The Lady Fortunato and the rest? Let us be gone. Yes, I said, let us be gone. For the love of God, Montresor. Yes, for the love of God. But to these words I hearkened in vain for a reply. I grew impatient. I called aloud, Fortunato! No answer. I called again. Fortunato! No answer still. I thrust a torch into the remaining aperture and let it fall within. Then came forth, in return, only a jingling of the bells. My heart grew sick. It was the dampness of the catacombs that made it so. I hastened to make an end of my labor. I forced the last stone into its position. I plastered it up. Against the new masonry, I re-erected the rampart of old bones. Of bones. For half a century, no mortal has disturbed them. In pace requiescat. You know, this could have been avoided if you guys, just, I don't know, talk to each other like normal people. Yeah, but what do I know? It makes a nice spoopy story. We're gonna take another little song break. Oh. Also, if for some reason you are like a little kid or not comfortable with swearing, don't watch this, please. If you're like a little kid, what are you doing on like big people, like adult YouTube? Stay on YouTube, kids. It's there for a reason, I promise. That fucker is back. Yeah, I thought he was gone for good too. It's been 7 years. You still pissed he almost beat you that time? Fuck you. Just saying. Things have changed a lot since he left town, that's for sure. I gotta send a message of who's really in charge of things now. welcome home. I'm gonna make you wish that you stayed gone. Say hello to a new status quo. Everyone knows that there's a brand new dawn. Turn the TV on. Welcome to Top of the Hour. We're discussing a certain has-been who has been spotted cavorting around town after a 7-year absence. Did anybody miss him? Did anybody notice? More on tonight's program. So the radio demon is back in town. Why is he hanging around? What does that mean for your family? Well, Handy, we got good news. He's a loser, a fossil, and I don't mean to somehow stub at the demon as a coward. You can take that as gospel. Pulling my view is impossible. I'm visual. He's barely audible. Stop giving him the time of day. Don't listen to a word he'd say. I hope he had a nice vacation, but he should have stayed away. While he hid in radio, we pivoted to video. Now it's medium, it's getting bloody rare. Hell's been better since he split. Where's he been? Who gives a shit? Salutations, good to be back on the air. Yes, I know it's been a while since someone with style treated hell to a broadcast. Sinners rejoice with a dated voice instead of a crowd-chasing mediocre video podcast. It's Vox and Sekiro pursuing a lure, putting between this fat and that. It's nothing working. Every day he's got a new format. You're looking at the future. He's the shit that comes before that. Is Vox as strong as he purports, or is it based on his supports? He'd be powerless without the other V's. Oh, please. And here's the sugar on the cream. He asked me to join his team. I said no, and now he's pissy. That's the tea. You old-timey prick. I'll show you suffering. Uh-oh, the TV is buffering. I'll destroy you. You winner. I'm afraid you've lost your signal. Let's begin. I'm gonna make you wish that I stayed gone. Tune on in when I'm done. Your status quo will know its race is run. Oh, this will be fun. That was fun. I know. And before we move on to our next poem from Edgar Allan Poe, I am going to boot up the instrumental for the next song so we don't have to go through ads. Also, I need a bit of a tea break, not gonna lie. Alright. The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and a curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this, and nothing more. Ah, distinctly did I remember that it was in the bleak December, and each separate a dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books a surcease of sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden who the angels name Lenore. Nameless here, forevermore. And the silken sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This is it, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly Your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is, I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door. Darkness was there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming, dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there was spoken was the whispered word, Lenore. Thus I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, Lenore. Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon I heard a tapping somewhat louder than before. Surely, said I, that is something at my window lattice. Let me see, then, where that is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more. Open here I flung the shutter, then, when, with many a flit and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he. Not a man stopped or stayed he, but when with the mien of a lord or lady perched upon my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, art sure no craven, ghastly glim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly Ionian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Much I marveled at this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing a bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon that sculpted bust above his chamber door, with such a name as Nevermore. But then the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word did he outpour. Nothing farther did than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till scarcely I more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, Nevermore. Startled at the stillness, broken by a reply so aptly spoken, doubtless, said I, what it utters is only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of nevermore. But the raven still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of the bird bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl, whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining, on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er. But whose velvet lining, with the lamp light gloating o'er your? Or she shall press, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God has lent thee, by these angels he has sent thee, respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind of nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil. Prophet still, O bird or devil, whether tempter sent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate, yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me, truly I implore, is there balm in the Gilead? Tell me, I am nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, Bodo fiend, I shrieked upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and to the night's plutonium shore. Leave no black plume as token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak out of my heart, and take thy form off of my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And then the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And then his eyes all have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him, streaming, throws a shadow on the floor, and my soul from that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. That was fun. So, in case you don't know, that is where our, if you don't know, if you come, assuming you aren't part of the U.S., like I said, I'm from Maryland. That means our American football team is the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore is not the capital of Maryland, but it is a major city, and the Ravens come from that poem. Fun! Now, one last song and then one last poem, so y'all can go out and trick or treat. One sec. Life inside a box of everyone's tiny design. All rise from all the gods and rules I will resign. You're right that power is power, but what's the point if I'm bored blind? You want this all to yourself, but let me tell you something. I'm here to stay, who needs help? Just getting started, darling. You want to play all your games, far from infernal charades. Go on, yes, stream till you wake, to all in disarray. Fun, we're off the top, passion until you drop. Catch us but never caught, the anarchy, our anarchy. Here, there, do what we want, pink hair like party on. No one cares, so what, we've got the anarchy, our anarchy. Bow to the prince of pain and suffering. He looks so small and cute next to the fucking king. Your range's deplorable, oh, you're so adorable. Hell don't need me, won't go back, here's where it's happening. Unlikely fate, where we're at now. I'll try your way, make these men bow. See the dogs VA, how they act out. Knew they know the face, throw at abs and they black out. Play the part, you've paint your mark in my heart. Though the past is past, couldn't help but check up. Don't make it a thing, I'm still the king. Bringing up hell, hear them sing your sinful things. you drop. Catch us but never caught. The anarchy, our anarchy. Here, there, do what we want. Pink hair like party on. No one cares, so what? We've got the anarchy, our anarchy. That was fun. Alright. Now let's slow it all down a bit. Listen to the calming heartbeat. True, nervous, very, very dreadful nervous had I been, and am, but why will you say that I am mad? This disease has sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all the things in the heaven and the earth. I heard many things in hell. How them? Am I mad? Hearken and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It's impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object there was none. Passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye, with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold. And so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now at this point, you fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing. But you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh, so gently. And then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern, all closed, so that no light shone out, and then I thrust in my head. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust in. I moved it slowly. Very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Would a madman have been so wise as this? And then, when my head was well in the room, I undid the lantern cautiously. Oh, so cautiously, for their hinges creaked. I did it just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eyes, and I did this for 7 long nights, every night, just at midnight. But I always found the eye always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work, for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone and inquiring how he has passed the night. So, you see, he would have been a very profound old man indeed to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked upon him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than mine did. Never before had that night I had felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph to think that there I was, opening the door little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly, as if startled. Now, you may think that I drew back, but no. His room was as black as pitch, and with a thick darkness, for the shutters were fastened through the fear of robbers. And so I knew that he could not see the opening of the door. and I kept pushing it on steadily. I had my head in and was about to open the lantern when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening, and the old man sprang up in bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quite still and said nothing. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle. In the meantime, I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in the bed, listening, just as I have done, night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall. Presently, I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. It was not a groan of grief, of pain, or grief. Oh no! It was the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, when all the world slept, it has welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo the terrors that distracted me. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt and pitied him, though I chuckled at heart. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise. When he had turned in the bed, his fears had been ever growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself, "There's nothing but the wind in the chimney. It is only a mouse crossing the floor," or "It is merely a cricket which has made a simple single chirp." Yet he had been trying to comfort himself with all these suppositions, but he had found it all in vain, because death, approaching him, had stalked him with his black shadow before him and enveloped the victim. It was the mournful influence of the perceived shadow that caused him to feel. And though he neither saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room. Yet when I waited a long time, very patiently, without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open it a little. It was a very, very little crevice in the lantern, so I opened it. You cannot imagine how stealthily, until at length a single dim ray, like the thread of a spider, shot out from the crevice and fell upon the vulture eye. It was wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, all a dull blue with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow in my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray as if by instinct precisely on that damned spot. And have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over acuteness of the senses? No, I say, there comes to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, as a watch makes, such as a watch makes, as it makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury, as the beating of a drum stimulates a soldier into courage. But yet, I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain the ray upon the eye. Meanwhile, the hellish tattoo of that heart increased. It grew quicker and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say, louder every moment. Do you mark me well? I have told you that I am nervous. So I am. And now, at the dead hour of the night, amid the dreadful silence of that old house, so strange a noise as this excited me to uncontrollable terror. Yet for some minutes longer I refrained and stood still, but the beating grew louder. I thought that the heart must burst, and now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leaped into the room. He shrieked once only. In an instant, I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. I then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. But for many minutes, the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length, it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the corpse. Removed. When I lost my place. Outly, the old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, it was stone. Stone, dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was still dead. His eye would trouble me no more. Huh? Whoops. If you still think me mad, you will no longer think when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned, and I walked hastily but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse, and I cut off the head, and the arms, and the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber, and deposited them all between the scantlings. Then I replaced the board so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out. No stain of any eye, of any kind. No blood spot, whatever. I had been too wary for that. The Tom had caught it all. When I had made an end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock, still as dark as midnight. As a bell sounded, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I now to fear? And entered 3 men, who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by the neighbor during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police office, and the officers, had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled. For what had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I took all my visitors all over the house. I bade them search well. I led them at length to his chamber. I then assured them his treasure was secure and undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room and desired them to rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chatted of familiar things, but ere long, I felt myself getting pale and wished them gone. My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ear. But they sat and still chatted. The ringing became more distinct. It continued. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained definiteness, until, at length, I just found that the noise was not within my ears. No doubt, now I grew very pale, but I talked more fluently, and with a heightened voice, yet the sound increased, and what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound, much such a sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath. And yet the officer told it not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. I rose and argued about travel in a high key and with violent gesticulations, but the noise steadily increased. Why would they not be gone? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited by fury by the observations of the men, but the noise steadily increased. Oh God, what could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore. I swung the chair upon which I had been sitting and gated it upon the boards, but the noise rose overall and continually increased. It grew louder, 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 and still the men chattered pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible they heard not? Almighty God, no, no! They heard, they suspected, they knew! They were making a mockery of my horror. This I thought, and this I think. But anything was better than this agony, anything more tolerable than this derision. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I fear that I must scream or die, and now, again, hark! Louder, 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 louder! Villains! I shrieked. Dissemble no more! Dissemble no more! I have done the deed! Tear up the blanks! Here! Here! Is the beating of his hideous heart! Happy Halloween.